wanted to start off with talking about my marriage and when there was a point in it where we weren't where we are today. There was a point in our marriage where we were on the verge of divorce. And I'm going to start and I'll go back. My husband and I got married in 2018, August 18th of 2018. Very much in love with each other. But if anybody that's intimate, close friends of ours knows, it's a long story. Between my husband and I, I fell in love with him very young age. We do have an age gap, so pretty much put it this way, we couldn't really be together at that time. Went off, lived our separate lives. Things did not work out for him with a past relationship. He ended up coming back to New York, and, to my same church and whatnot. And eventually we rekindled things, got together. Our relationship as boyfriend and girlfriend was very volatile. It was very up and down. It was very roller coaster. We would break up all the time. Like, if you saw it, you would pretty much maybe even code it as like a little bit toxic. We were definitely not the best versions of ourselves. My husband had come from a relationship where he was very hurt. There was infidelity on the other side. And he had a lot of trust issues. He was coming with a lot of that baggage. I myself, of course, had work that I needed to do as well. So we were not the best versions of each other, but we chose to be together. We knew we wanted to get married. We knew we weren't just dating to date. And even though, we had a lot of ups and downs, we did ultimately make the decision. We got engaged, planned out our wedding. Definitely still rocky road. So we didn't get married. Everything was smooth sailing, but we very much were in love. That was never a doubt. There was always a lot of love. And the reason I remember when I had to weigh out the factors, like how much sometimes we didn't get along and how much we butted heads and like all his baggage that I knew he still had to work through. I kept thinking, I don't necessarily think there is ever a right time to get married. So I took it back to God. I've always said, I want your will over mine. Like, my plans, my dreams, my wants, my desires, everything. But all of that, like, you could throw it in the garbage and cross it all out and give me what you want for my life, because I've always understood it's only God's will that is perfect. I may want something and think it's going to be good for me, but turns out it's not. What God wants for me is going to be good for me in the long haul. So I've always prayed that way, and I definitely knew God brought us back together. Like, if I get into details, which maybe one day I will, the story is really, really crazy. Just the way that we united again. And it was something that I had declared at a young age, not necessarily knowing I was declaring it, but I did. Like, I declared that was going to be my husband, that I was going to have kids with him, that I didn't know how God was going to do it, but he was going to bring us back together. And fast forwarding years later, like, that all really did come to fruition. And amazingly so, we ended up getting married. But when I had to make that decision of, am I really going to get married, even though there are all these this roller coaster of a relationship, I ultimately took it to what is God's will. And I understood that his hand had been in the middle of everything. And I felt that although it was hard, it was going to be hard and probably wasn't going to be easy, I knew that we were pretty much made for each other. Like, he was what I needed and I was exactly what he needed. And I saw it from a very, very, very spiritual point of view. And I was not adamant about, I'm in love, I have to marry this guy. No, I was very much like, God, if it's not him, like, I'll be hurt, but I'm okay with that. But no, like, God did minister to me, confirmed in many different ways that we were for each other and that there was a greater purpose between our union. So ultimately, we ended up getting married. We had a really hard time in the beginning of our marriage adjusting. So we both lived with our parents. My husband had lived by himself before, so he knows what it's like to take care of himself. I didn't. My mom's always been a stay-at-home mom. And so my mom has always pretty much picked up after us. Like, we would get home, just throw the jacket, you finish eating, leave your plates in the sink. My mom would wash our clothes. Like, my mom would do literally everything for us. We didn't have to worry about a thing in my house. My husband, it was different. His parents taught him like to have responsibilities, pick up after yourself, make your bed. Like nobody's going to do that for you. You're growing up, learn how to do it. So our upbringing, very different. So once we got married, there was a lot of headbutting, a lot of clashing over simple things like I wouldn't think to make the bed because I never did in my house. Somebody would do it for me and I would just be like, oh, well, we're going to come and eventually you go to work, you come back, shower, eventually you end up in the bed again. What's the point of making it? That was my mentality, but it mattered so much to him. Like it bothered him so much to not see the bed done when he came home. So I remember one day I was like, you know what? Marriage is about sacrifices, it's about compromise. So if it makes him if it's going to mean something to him, even if it means nothing to me, I'm just going to take an extra 2 minutes in the morning and I'm going to make the bed. And I started to do that, constantly. And it was small things like that. But we butted heads a lot. It was small things like coming home and throwing my purse anywhere, throwing my jacket on top of the couch instead of putting it right by the coat closet, right by the door. So it was very small things of now being one and living together that we were butting heads tremendously, and it caused a lot of friction. So I would say the whole first year for us was a big adjustment. There was not really much of a honeymoon phase in our case. We didn't have that whole we're so in love where nothing you do is wrong. No, we were very much like getting on each other's nerves about little things. Again, right, my husband was still dealing with a lot of trauma still from that past relationship, like things that just they leave you a certain way. A lot of anger built up that hadn't been worked on. I myself, right, I was very hard to sometimes budge. Like I always thought I was like super easy, but I wasn't. Like although I tried to like compromise here and there and I was trying so hard to like be a good wife, I know that I lacked a lot of like comprehending. I know I was patient many times and that kind of helped us get where we are today, but there were many times that like I didn't help. Like I would pretty much light the fire, like add fuel to his fire. Like if he was already worked up, I would not shut up and I would just keep yapping and bickering and I would make things grow to a really just volatile magnitude. So instead of kind of dwindling things and making sure things went better, I would ignite them. And I can admit that, right? I was not perfect. I was not coming into this marriage perfect. So all of that, past trauma, me not necessarily knowing how to be a wife, or at least not the wife that the Bible calls me to be, right? Esa idónea, esa mujer sabia, que edifica su casa. I was not doing that at that time. Like I was really not helping the situation. And I remember it just got to a really ugly point where it was just a lot of fighting. It was very unhealthy. It was like every other day an argument. It was exhausting. I personally don't like yelling. My husband is loud. I'm not. So even people from the outside looking in, like we would have arguments in front of people. And people always thought like, oh my God, poor Jolie Mark, because nobody ever heard me. But like I got a mouth on me. My husband always says that, like, she's like a little snake, like, you're just not gonna know. And you're not, because I'm not loud. So I will do things discreetly. Like, I will piss him off and I will say something so hurtful. Nobody would know because I didn't yell it, I don't showcase it. I'm not putting it out there. But I still would do things that you just shouldn't do and you shouldn't say as a wife. So his actions were a lot more noticeable to the public, to other people. And I would say the first 2 years of our marriage, we struggled tremendously. It got to the point where I remember our goal, we had said we wanted to, make sure we settled into our marriage, spent that time with each other. We did travel. We did a lot of stuff. In between all of that, up and down, there were moments where we were up. Again, there was always a lot of love. Like, there was no doubt that I loved him. He loved me. So we had great moments. We went on vacation. We went out a lot. Whenever we were good, we were good. We were great. So there are great memories from the first years of us being married. But I remember we had set a goal, let's travel. Let's do things together, just us. And then 2 years in, we want to try to have a baby. And we were coming up on that 2 years. So it was 2020, January-ish, beginning of February. And our relationship was just at such a bad point. It was really, really bad. We were having really big fights. It was really unhealthy. It was a lot of like crying. It was just, at that point, we were a lot more down than we were up. And it was hard to see hope. It was just hard to see, like, is this going to change? Is it going to get better? Like, how much longer? I just felt like, how much longer are we going to just have to suffer this way and go further this way? And it was coming up on that 2 years. Like, we just had a couple months till we made 2 years. And I was like, God, the desire of my heart is to, have kids. And we said 2 years, and it's coming up, and this relationship is going south. And I refused. As much as I wanted to be a mom, I refused to bring a child into such a toxic and negative environment where all they would witness was disrespect, constant disrespect on both ends, and just arguing and yelling. I did not. Like, I grew up watching a lot of arguing, a lot of not much love, just not a great ideal upbringing in terms of my parents' marriage. And I didn't want that for my kids. Like, I turned out fine, thank God, but I didn't want to put my child through that. Like, I really wanted my kids to see love firsthand, like from their parents. Like, I didn't want them to be the ones that they go to their friend's house and they're like, oh my God, my friend's parents get along so great and mine are always bickering. I didn't want to be that. And as much as I wanted to be a mom, I was like, God, I'm not doing it. I was like, if this relationship, like if this marriage is not going to work, let it not work without any kids in it. Because I didn't want to make it more complicated. And I remember I was like, I was at that point, it was really bad. I felt that there was not really hope. I remember I always told my husband, I was like, I don't have no faith in you, like none at all, that you have the capacity to change. But I would always tell him, like, pissed off, like, even though I have no faith in you, the only reason I'm still here is because I have faith in God. Like, I have faith that God can make you a man of God, that God can make you the man that I know you're called to be. Because that's one thing I've always recognized, my husband has a calling, and that God can use him in powerful ways. And I recognized that. And I knew God united us for a greater purpose. And it would just piss me off so much when I would just kind of see and watch him allow his trauma and just all his baggage take over and define who he was as a person and get the better of him, when I knew he had just had such greater potential. And I remember at that point, I was looking up divorce lawyers. Like, I was so serious. I just couldn't anymore. Like, I was just so exhausted of trying to talk about it, telling God, like, this isn't working and stuff. And I just felt like nothing was changing. And I remember COVID happened. My birthday was February 1st. I think we might have gone away and stuff for my birthday. And we kind of came back, and everything in March, I think, shut down. And funny thing is, right before everything shut down, we had decided, I told them, I was like, this is my last resort. You have to agree to go to therapy. I found a Christian psychologist. We'll do online therapy, or that's it. Like, if that doesn't work, like, I don't know what else is. And he agreed. And I remember COVID honestly was the best thing that happened to our marriage. That when we started to we couldn't go anywhere, we couldn't hang out with friends, it was just him and I, like, that helped us get back to the basics and that bond that we shared. And we noticed that it was outside factors, like, putting such a damper on what we had, and that was when most of our arguments would take place. And that quarantine, along with, talking to the psychologist and unpacking a lot of things from both of our past, that, and honestly, prayer. Like, I remember I wrote in a notebook, like, in the back, Junior is this and that, and everything that I believed he was going to be, like a man of God, a man that respects me, all these things that he at the moment was not, but that I knew he was going to be. And declaring that, believing that, praying constantly at night, talking it out, seeking help, it saved our marriage. Like, I'm not exaggerating. It completely shifted it. He literally became everything and more than I thought he would be. And I remember, amazingly so, I shifted my focus and I decided I wanted to focus on being a better me. And that being a better me would cause him to want to be a better him. And that's exactly what happened. Once I stopped focusing on fixing my husband, who I thought was broken, I was like, you know what? I need to fix me, and I need to let God fix him. I need to let God do what he needs to do in him. That's when everything shifted. And fast forwarding almost 6 years later, we celebrated in August our 6-year anniversary. We have two beautiful girls. I could not be more in love with him. He could not be more obsessed with me. I thank God. I thank God for everything. And although we were on such a bad verge of almost getting divorced, to see where we are today, it's such a blessing. And, you know, I'm so happy. So I'm just here to say, like, there's hope. If you know God united you with who you're with, there is definitely hope. Don't lose hope. You might not even have faith in who you're with, but have faith in God. Like, he can honestly do it all. That and putting in the work, you can save anything. There's nothing too broken that he can't fix.